Accountability is actually something we crave at our job. And by that, I mean, you could say it's attention. Do people know what I'm doing? And is it kind of being tracked? Now that might seem kind of countercultural. Like, well, no, it'd be great to just have no one know kind of what I'm doing, and I can, surf the web, or I can check Facebook. Yeah, whatever. But that's actually not what we like. Like, we really do kind of crave a sense that what I do matters, and people are looking out for it. So does your boss or supervisor, do they know what you're doing? Is there a way of kind of publicly recognizing that as appropriate? So I think that's one thing that's very important. Another thing that's really important is well-defined goals or targets. So if you're in a job and it's it's nebulous about where you're going, or sometimes programmers will just kind of be working on fixing bugs for the same application for a long time, but they don't really know where it's all kind of leading to. That can make you feel discontent. So having targets, and then having regular feedback loop. Regular feedback loop. So people know what we're doing. We have well-established goals and targets, and then we are getting regular feedback about how we're doing to get to those targets. Those are the things that studies are showing are actually vastly important. Now, having a good salary and all that is important as well. But if some of those things aren't in place, you're going to start to feel like your spirit is dying in the job. And it just isn't. It's when I see certain cultures, it's a little heartbreaking to see when they're working like that. It just shouldn't be that hard to make people know that they matter. Just stopping by regularly, hey, how are things going? Good. Looking forward to our kind of once a week check-in where we can see how things are happening. So I say this: if you're in a job and you're feeling that there's some discontent, or you're just not feeling it at the end of the day, are those things in order? Do you feel like you matter? Is attention being paid to you? Do you know exactly what your goals are for the next month, 6 months, year? And then is there a feedback loop? And if those things are not in place, sometimes you can change that. Other times it's too kind of embedded in the culture, and it really is time to make a change.
And then making sure that you are reconnecting with your why, like we've already discussed, and doing something that really appeals to you in a very meaningful way, as opposed to something that you just happen to fall into, perhaps. A lot of times when some of this stuff goes awry, people think, well, I'm just not cut out for a traditional job, and then they get that kind of entrepreneurial bug, which is, perfectly understandable, and that may be very valid. But it's also possible that a traditional job might be perfect for you, that it might be fine. You're just not in the right one. You're not in the one that is appealing to you in the ways that it needs to, or your approach to it, or the treatment of you by your supervisor, or how you're being recognized or not recognized, that the pieces of the puzzle are not falling together in a way that creates a traditional job environment in which you thrive. And so that doesn't necessarily mean you have to jump ship and go into business for yourself. It might just mean that you need to kind of take a look at things and see, how are the pieces of this puzzle fitting together, or are they? And if they're not, what can I do about it? Well, the answer certainly isn't, well, sit it out and see what happens in the next year. It could be something as simple as, you know what, I thought this was for me at one point. I now have to kind of own up to the fact that it isn't, which can be hard to do, especially if this is the source of your livelihood, your income, you're not sure what's coming next. That fear starts to creep in again. But sometimes it's as easy as shifting gears, and then all of a sudden, certainly not overnight, but you end up in a position that really appeals to you in ways that previous roles may not have.
Yeah. And if you're watching right now and you are feeling really at that bottom, if you're feeling really stuck, I want this to be a word of encouragement to you. I want you to know that we have power to make changes. You do not have to stay at the same company. As Dan Miller says, you really can find work you love in 48 days. So, if you're there, hear us in this. It is very tough, but change is possible. And it's not you necessarily. It's not that you are doing something wrong. And if you just did something better, you'd feel like more satisfaction. It might be time for a change, and that can happen.